All right, we are live here with episode 2 of Office Hours, right on time at 7 o'clock Central. Depending on if your clock is slow or fast, people may be logging in from their mobile phones or whatever. So we'll give a few minutes for everybody to get in here and join us on the show so that they can absolutely get all of the value that we intend to give to you, because we are chock full of stuff to help you tonight not only pass your real estate exam, but understand the real estate game as a whole. So I can't wait to show you what we have for you this week. So we're just going to give a few more minutes for the rest of you to kind of roll on in, and we're going to get started. So, hey guys, good to see you. Don't forget, as y'all are filing in, if you've got questions, please make sure to send them to us, either using hashtag office hours on Twitter. If you put your question there, we will see it. Or you can also send it to officehours@donaldsoneducation.com. So if you want to send your question by email, you can do it that way. But we highly encourage social media as well. It's easy for us to index and find that stuff. So if you want to use social media, go ahead and ask your question. This is your chance to ask all of those burning questions. And for a lot of us that may be online students only, this is your access. This is your chance. It's like private tutoring, except we're all here because we're all in this together. So if you've got questions, make sure to send them to me, because I want you to get the most out of this session as we possibly can. So welcome to Office Hours. This is my office. After a long day of working with real estate agents and all of the things that we had going on today, really it was a great day. If you're familiar with our Superstars real estate training program, we kind of had our last session / graduation / celebration party today. So it's been a really great day. It's a bunch of agents that just got out of real estate school, and now they've taken their Excel training, the Superstars 2.0, so that now they can hit the ground running. They have a business plan. They know what to do, so they don't have to worry about that. So it's been a really good day. And so now I want to focus on you guys that may be watching the show that want to get to that point and are in the middle of real estate school, just starting real estate school, preparing for the state license exam, really anywhere, not just here at Donaldson or on the Louisiana test, but anywhere. I'm here to help you guys. So to start off the show, what I'd like to do is to give you some really good advice on preparing for the license exam, and really any real estate exam, whether it's at our real estate school, but specifically here we're talking about passing the test, because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things that get told, that get passed from student to student, just like we talked about in episode 1. And one of my biggest concerns is that there's bad information being spread around out there, specifically like on the internet and all the things people say and that they read and the sites that we find ourselves. So in this episode, what I have for you is I want to talk to you for a little bit about the types of questions that you're going to see at the PSI license exam. Because one of the things that I want you to understand is that knowing the material is really only half the battle, but also knowing how they're going to ask you the questions is the other half of the battle. And I'll share with you a story. And this has happened multiple times, but I've had students that'll come to me and they will say, I just can't pass the test. I don't know what's going on. I know this stuff. Whatever the case may be, they may be bad test takers. They may have an issue with one section of the test, but you'll be amazed. Some of these folks, if I get the book out and I start asking questions, they've got this thing memorized. And I'm like, man, how can this person fail the test? They know the whole book backwards and forwards. But test taking is a skill. And being able to answer questions about what you're being asked is really a skill. And it's something that you want to be prepared for. And our students and the folks that come through our program, what you want to understand is we're preparing you for this along the way. Because the types of test questions that you're going to see at the national exam are standardized. There's formats that they're going to use. There's types of questions that you should expect. And so I want you guys to be prepared for those. So a couple of things about that. Number one, nobody knows the exact questions that you're going to have on your national exam. So if somebody's out there telling you, such and such site has the exact questions, there's no way, because that would be a copyright violation. You would be stealing from the testing center. So nobody knows exactly. But what we do know is the material they're going to ask you, like we talked about last week on the PSI outline. And then we know how they're going to ask you about this material, because that's critically important. One thing I want you guys to understand on the national real estate exam is that they not only want to make sure that you know the basic concepts, they want to make sure you can apply them. So as a great case study and example, I'm going to show you the same concept that's asked 3 different ways using the 3 main question types, so that you can see how a concept you may understand backwards and forwards and really know well, you've got to be able to apply it on the test. So I'm going to pull up here a couple of examples. Give me a second. I'm going to make sure that I can share the screen with you. All right, everybody should be seeing that. And so what this is some sample questions to help you understand the main types of questions you'll see at the license exam. So before we get into the actual questions, I want you to remember a few things in case you don't know. Number 1, all of the questions are multiple choice. There is no true false on the state exam. There's no essay questions. You don't have to draw any diagrams. There's going to be no blue books or anything like that. It's going to be 80 questions on the national that are all multiple choice. It's going to be 55 questions on the state, at least in Louisiana, that are all multiple choice. It's a time test on the computer. So the biggest thing you want to understand is to be prepared for a computerized test. And I'm assuming, since you're watching this program online, you're probably pretty comfortable with a computer, but you want to make sure that you understand when you go in there, it is a timed exam and it is on the computer. And so follow good directions about how to prepare for your test and forget the rest. Forget what everybody else tells you. Forget about that bad advice. Forget those horror stories, because a lot of those don't make any sense, or you want to consider the source of who is complaining about the license exam. And what I want you guys to understand is the test is very fair, because if it wasn't fair, these companies that administer the test would have a tough time receiving and renewing their contracts with these state license agencies. So the test is not designed for you to fail. It's not designed to trick you. It's not designed to play with your mind. It's designed to make sure you know the stuff and that you can apply your knowledge. So let's take a look at the different types of questions that you're going to have on the national real estate exam, so that you can be prepared, not only knowing the material, but how they're going to ask it to you. So let's look at question type number 1, which I call a direct fact question. The first type of question is a direct fact. And basically, it's going to make sure that you understand fundamental concepts like a definition, some real estate fundamental, straightforward, making sure that you know it. So direct fact questions, what I would call, is like the easiest type of question you can get on the test. And you should take advantage of these, because all of this is usually rote memory of a fact or a principle from your studies in real estate school. So here's an example. Under the principles of agency, the following legal responsibility requires that all material facts are made known to the parties and that proper forms are used. So all you have to do is answer this direct factual question about the agency laws and principles. So does this reference care, obedience, accounting, or disclosure? Of course, the requirement to make all material facts known to the parties and using the proper forms, that would be disclosure. Remember, there's C-O-A-L-D. The one that's missing here, because we only have 4 choices, is loyalty. So a direct fact question is easy. And when I say easy, what I mean is it's directly, usually right out of the principles, right out of the material, just making sure you know it. Okay? So in this question, we're just making sure that you know the concept or the principle of agency of disclosure, and that's what requires material facts are known and that you use the proper forms. Let's move on to what you'll see more of on the test. So I want you guys to understand the next 2 types of questions are going to be the majority of your national real estate exam. The second question type is what I call, what is the next step? In other words, what comes next, or what is the legal action that should come next? So rather than just knowing rote memory what a disclosure form is, or that are required to disclose, they ask you or kind of give you a partial sentence or story. Now what happens? So let's look at the example I gave you here. Still talking about disclosure, and look how it's asked in a totally different way. A real estate licensee was walking through a property with the seller, and the seller noted some mold growth in the corner of the garage. Thinking it was no big deal, the seller left the mold off the property disclosure. The real estate licensee should. So you see, I call it the next step because a lot of times they're basically saying, knowing what you know about the law and the principles of agency, what should you do next? So your choices are, you should do nothing since the seller is the party required to disclose. Choice number 2 here, the licensee should amend the form and add the mold issue on the property disclosure. Choice number 3, the licensee should inform the seller that this issue should be disclosed, and if it's not added on the property disclosure by the seller, the licensee will have to disclose separately. So you see, you need to understand, what are my requirements under disclosure? And here's a situation that actually is somewhat common in the real world. What should you do? So you got to think, well, what does the law say? What am I required to do? So one task and one trick that's great when you're taking a test is to try to eliminate a choice or two. So one of these is this one. You should eliminate this. This cannot be right, because you are never supposed to write or to fill out the property disclosure. That's always for the seller. That's always for the owner. So I'm putting that in red because that can't be right. So you should eliminate that. So in this particular case, we're actually looking at 50-50 if we've eliminated that one. So we should do nothing since it's the seller's requirement to disclose. Or the third choice, we should inform the seller that they need to disclose that. And if they don't add it on the disclosure, we'll have to disclose separately. So the next step is, given this situation, the third choice is the right answer. This is the right answer because you need to understand, under my duty to disclose within the law, it's my duty to make sure that all parties are disclosed. Well, I don't think you can see that yellow. Let me change the color here. Little Donaldson green for you. That's the good answer. So the licensee should inform the seller, because what you need to understand is, look, the seller told me and showed me there's some mold growth in the corner of the garage. Now I have what's called actual knowledge of the mold if I'm that real estate licensee. So I have to make sure it's disclosed. So there's 2 ways this can be done. I could tell the seller, look, I know you thought it was no big deal, but we need you to add this on the disclosure form. And if they refuse or they won't, then you have to make sure that you disclose that when you're showing the property. You see? So we're taking the same concept, agency disclosure, and asking it in a totally different way. On the national exam, it's much more likely they're going to give you this type of question, not just having the knowledge, but knowing what to do with it. Now let's look at question type number 3, which I call scenario, or truly applying your knowledge, where they'll give you a mini story and then ask you questions about that story. So let's look at an example, also related to disclosure, to show you the same concept, how they can ask it to you 3 different ways. So broker A has worked with this particular seller before and was wary about working with him again due to past difficulties. However, broker A decided to list the house for the seller and held an open house. Broker B visited that open house with his buyer client and noted that he was previously the listing agent on this home and was glad that a plumbing issue he remembered was left off the property disclosure. He made no mention of this to his client. Which statement best applies to this situation? You see, now we're taking disclosure and agency and the legality of fiduciary responsibilities. We're giving you different parties. We're giving you different loyalties. And we're going to ask you questions about what is the best statement that follows this paragraph. So statement number 1, broker A is required to inform broker B's client of the plumbing issue as the listing agent. Broker A should not disclose the plumbing issue as he has no actual or imputed knowledge of the issue. Broker B should disclose the plumbing issue to his buyer client since he was the previous agent on this property and was aware of the plumbing issue. And finally, broker B should not disclose the plumbing issue since it may violate his fiduciary duty to his former seller whom he worked for on this particular property. See, this is a tough one. It's a tough one because it's kind of a long story with a lot of stuff going on. But the biggest thing is you need to ask yourself straight factual questions. If I'm broker A, what am I supposed to do? If I'm broker B, what am I supposed to do? And the best answer that fits the bill is the one that you want to choose. So the best answer here, believe it or not, is actually this choice here. And the reason is simple. What you know needs to be disclosed. Since broker B is showing the property to his buyer, and broker B is the only one in that scenario that has knowledge of a possible plumbing issue because they were the former listing agent, broker B, since they know about it, should disclose that to their client, who in this scenario is the buyer. You follow that? So you got to understand, where is your fiduciary responsibility? Where is your duty to disclose? Since the responsibility to disclose is on those parties that have actual knowledge. You see, we can't know. There's nothing in here that tells us that broker A knows anything about the plumbing problem. There's nothing in here that says anything about the seller knowing about the plumbing difficulties, although it's likely if they're the ones that bought the property from broker B, but we don't know that. So a great hint here is don't make stuff up. Don't bring stuff into the question that's not there. This is what we've got. And so I can only answer based on what I've got. And the best answer based on what I've got is that broker B, since they have actual knowledge of the possible plumbing issue, since they were the previous listing agent, should at least make their client aware of that. You see, you guys need to understand your duty to disclose material facts is like always. And when it's your client, if you know about something, you make them aware of it. You don't have to know the details. That plumbing issue may have been repaired. You see, don't lead anything into this. The plumbing issue might be repaired. So broker B discloses it. The buyer says, can you find out? Broker B asks about it, and the seller goes, oh yeah, we repaired it. No problem. So what you guys want to understand is don't create scenarios that aren't there. Don't answer questions or bring stuff that isn't there. Take the situation they give you, apply your knowledge of the principle, and choose the best solution. So again, you're going to have direct fact questions. Those are what I call the easiest because they're pretty straightforward. You're going to have the what's the next step question. They're going to give you a lot of those. And then they're also going to give you a lot of scenarios and which statement is best, or what's the best course of action, or what should you suggest that your client do, et cetera, et cetera. So taking the basic principles of real estate and making you apply them, you're going to see that much more on the license exam than just straightforward, fill in the blank, here's the definition. You may get lucky and get some of those because it's not that that isn't important. Direct facts, they'll give you a lot of those about laws, making sure that you know about regulations and maybe how many days or what the law says or who's a protected class, direct factual questions. But the license exam, the national real estate exam, has moved much more towards making you apply your knowledge. They want to make sure that you not only know the principles, that you can use them as a real estate agent. So keep in mind those three types of questions, because if you want to pass the exam the first time, you got to do two things. You got to know your stuff, and then you also have to know how they are going to ask you about that stuff. So that was just a little quick introduction into the types of questions you may see. I'm going to go ahead and put my mug back on the screen here. So I'm back, and hopefully you guys found that helpful. If you're watching the show and you found that helpful, please go on to Twitter and let me know that you like that. My Twitter handle is Chris Talks Daily, or use the hashtag office hours and let me know that you like that or that you found that helpful. Because if I know that you found that helpful, it'll inspire us to do more and to give you more information like that that you may be able to use later. Okay? So now that we have that out of the way, a couple of other tips about the state exam I want to make sure that you know. Number one, do not go in there thinking that the idea of that test is to keep people out of the industry, or that it's designed for you to fail, or that it's going to trick your mind or anything like that, because it isn't. And I'll give you a really kind of humorous example. Have you ever, anyone ever, have you interacted with a real estate agent anywhere on earth that you were like, man, you know, that person, whew, how did they get their license? And in other words, if there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have a real estate license, do you think all of them are smarter than you? Do you think all of them know more than you or studied harder? Guys, the statistical analysis says there's no way. So don't think that everybody else is smarter or has better information or anything else. Everybody has to go through the process. Everybody has to learn their stuff. And everybody has to answer the questions on the exam right. Because remember, the purpose of the exam is to protect the public. So the purpose of the exam is to make sure you have that baseline fundamental knowledge of your real estate stuff, so that when we give you that license and you're out there working for and with other people, that you're not going to harm them through to just pure ignorance of the rules or the principles of the industry and all of that in general. So guys, if you're watching, I can see there's a few of you on here. If you have a question at this point, is a great time to ask. Email me at officehours@donaldsoneducation.com. Use the hashtag officehours and ask your question on Twitter. Tweet at me on Twitter. My handle is @ChrisTalksDaily. Ask your question. If you're here and there's something burning that you want to know about, this is your chance. That's what Office Hours is all about, and I'm really excited to be able to help you guys and answer the questions that you want to know. So if you see me looking over here, I've kind of got my multiple monitors, and over here where all the questions are rolling in, and all of the stuff that people are asking. Thank you so far for those of you that are sitting in your questions, and those of you that have questions, send them on in. Give me a chance to help you out and answer your question, okay? So Crystal, if you're watching, I got your question here, and she asked, what would be your tips and suggestions for study strategies for someone while taking the online course and once you get through with the real estate school and preparing for the license exam? So that's a very common question. It's a great one. Crystal, thanks for sending that in, and I'll be glad to help you with that. There's a few things I want to say, and I can keep it simple and then give you the long answer. Here's the simple, short answer. The biggest enemy for you in terms of success in real estate school and on the exam is time. And what I mean by that is the more time that you allow to tick by between when you start and enroll and begin your real estate program and when you actually go to the license exam, the more time that goes by, the less of a chance you have to pass the exam. Statistics show that the more time that goes by, scores go down. The reason is, think about it. If you started school 2 years ago and now you're going to take your test, are you going to remember everything you studied when you first started 2 years prior? So keeping everything in a reasonable, concentrated window is very important. One of the biggest lies I hear people tell themselves about preparing for a test, and it's human nature, because it is scary. It is a big test. It does cost money. And what I want you guys to understand is I'm on your side. I don't get money if you fail your test. I don't want to see anybody fail. My mission is for all of you to pass. So what I want you to understand is people will lie to themselves and say, well, I'm not going to take my test until next month because I need more time to study. Now, 9 out of 10 people, are they really going to study hard every day for a month before they go take that test? Or are they going to put the entire process down, put it off, say, oh, I'll be ready next month because I'm not ready now. And then they're going to be just as crammed, just as stressed, just as anxious next month as they would have been this month, except it would have been better this month because it's sooner after they got out of school. So time is one of your biggest enemies. And so what I want you guys to make sure that you do is don't procrastinate. Don't put it off. Try to take your test as soon as you can from when you graduate real estate school. That is going to give you a better chance to pass, because the more time that ticks by, the more of that stuff that's leaking out of your ears. And if it's months or even years, you're going to really struggle to pass the test, not because you're not smart or capable, but because it's been a while, right? I mean, you might need to refresh and watch this on YouTube again to remember what I said 20 minutes ago, much less what we might have taught you in class 2 years ago. And also understand, you have seen real estate changes quickly. So the longer the amount of time between when you're in school and you take the test, the higher the chances things may be changing. The test, the rules and regulations, the laws, the whole real estate world. But when it comes to the online course, specifically if you're enrolled in our online course, one of the things I would tell you is I am a big believer, and surely in future episodes we're going to talk about this. Any of you guys that are superstars or taking about continuing ed watching this, you already know I'm a huge fan of blocking off time. And so if you're taking our online course, and let's say you've signed up for the 30-day course, well, I'm a huge fan of, okay, it's going to take the average learner about 90 hours, since it's a 90-hour course, to complete it. So if there's 30 days in a month, that's 3 hours a day. Guys, you got to schedule that out and do it. Now, is it possible you can finish somewhat quicker? It depends. Usually the answer is yes. It depends on the state laws and the requirements as to the time you're required to be online to finish a program. But the short answer is yes, you can finish faster, but you want to prepare for it's going to take 90 hours, as if like we sat you in class and you had to take a 90-hour course. So what that means is you've got to be diligent with your schedule. You've got to plan it out in advance. So try to do just an hour at a time, a lesson a day, and schedule it out. Do it at the same time every day. You'll be amazed how fast you'll progress through the course. The folks that tend to struggle or not get through the course, remember, the advantage of the course is also its disadvantage. The flexibility is its crutch, and that it's based on you logging in and doing the work. We're never going to make you do it. The system's not just going to automatically pass you. The only way you're going to get through the course is to log in and do it. And so that is its flexibility and also its weakness for those that may not have the discipline. So if you want the discipline, take out your calendar, take out a planner, put it on your online calendar, block out time, an hour a day, do one lesson a day where nobody's going to bother you. Your cell phone is put away, right? No distractions, and you'll be amazed. You'll get right through that course. Like most things in life, it just comes down to having a plan and then executing that plan and having the discipline, because it's a great prep for the real estate career. Online course is a great prep, and I'll tell you why. Because when you get your real estate license, nobody's going to make you work. That's what you want, right? A lot of people get their real estate license because they want to make more money. They want more freedom. They've always wanted to do it. A lot of these are very common. But what I want you guys to understand is that freedom, and what's awesome about it is also its crutch. Because when you get your real estate license, there's no boss calling you at 8 a.m. if you didn't show up to work. There's no schedule on the wall where you have to be at work. If you don't have the discipline to get up and to go work and to do what it takes to make it in a real estate sales business, you may not make it. So the online course is a great prep for that, because nobody's making you do it, right? Nobody's telling you, okay, log in, you got to go do it, right? Nobody's calling you saying, hey, it's Crystal, it's 10 o'clock and you're not working on your course. You're supposed to be working on your course. That's just not reality, right? You don't want us bothering you like that. Maybe we'll set up a system one day where we'll do that. But so what you need to understand is you got to have the discipline. You got to understand that it's designed with extreme flexibility. Use that to your advantage and stick to your schedule. And then when you finish real estate school, get out and go take your license exam as soon as you can. The enemy to success on the test is time more than anything else. So Crystal, I hope that answers your question. If you like the answer, please let me know. Put it out on Twitter, put it on Facebook. Let me know that you like that answer, because I want to know that I was able to help you. All right, I'm looking over here. I got a few other questions rolling in. Thank you guys so much. I'm seeing some stuff on Twitter. I love it. Thank you so much for interacting. Thank you so much. I'm going to retweet Michelle here. Thank you for watching. I appreciate that. Got another question here from Jake. So Jake, if you're watching, here we go. Jake's question is, do you have tips for those of us who are studying for the exam and must keep their job to start off once licensed? Jake, that is such a good question, and I am really glad that you asked this. In fact, every broker in town, if they knew I was about to answer this question, would love to log in so that I can answer it for you. Let's talk about the realities of the real estate business. So let's get a little bit out of the school part and talk about the realities of real estate as a career so that you can understand. Because Jake's asking, you know, what are the tips for me? Look, I've got a full-time job. I've got other responsibilities, and I'm going to have to keep my job once I get my license because I have bills to pay. And I respect that. In fact, in the old days when there weren't online courses, one of the things we used to say was, and I tell students this now, is I respect our night students. And I tell them that because most of them are coming straight from work, right? So you've worked all day at whatever job you're trying to get out of and get into real estate. Now you've got a 3-hour real estate class as an example. You are really putting in the time that's necessary to get where you want to go. So that really impresses me. It impresses me when people take their vacation from work to come to a 2-week class so that they can just knock it out. They're using their vacation time for a job that they don't want to keep. And so, Jake, your question is very valid and it's common. I'm really glad that you asked. So here's a couple of things that I'll say. Number one is that if you're finding the time right now to fit in your real estate studies while you have a full-time job doing something else, you're already setting the stage for what you're going to do once you have your license. If you're struggling with that a little bit, let's go back to what I just said. It's all about blocking off the time. So I'll give you an example. I know a lot of people are excited about Game of Thrones, the new season's out and all of that. Guys, you have Netflix, right? You've got Amazon Prime. You don't have to watch Game of Thrones right now. What is important to you? Game of Thrones or getting your real estate license? So if I can put off the next season of Game of Thrones for the next month, and the time I would normally be sitting in front of the TV watching Netflix, I'm studying my real estate. Well, then that way I just found the time to fit in real estate into my life so that I'll be able to pass the test and move on into the industry. And I'm just using it as a silly example because a lot of people think they don't have the time. But guys, sometimes you got to make short-term sacrifices for long-term benefit. So as short-term sacrifices, do what you got to do to get out of school. Put off things that you normally would be doing so that you can study and keep your eye on the long-term benefit of getting your real estate license. Now let's talk about, Jake, once you have your license, okay? Once you have your license, you need to understand that the same discipline has got to apply. Short-term sacrifices for long-term benefit. Real estate is a sales business. So if you've never been in sales before, if you've never owned your own business before, Jake, I don't know if you have or not, but just in general, okay, what I want you guys to understand is that means that it's going to take time for you to build it. So when you get your license, you should look at yourself as a startup business. How cool is that? You just started a business. You get your real estate license, you just started a business. And what you need to understand is there's going to be patience before the success really hits. And so let's take 2 to 3 months where you are generating leads, you're getting those clients, you're getting those first listings, you're getting properties under contract for the first time because you're new. Well, remember, in real estate, our contracts state that closing may not be 45 or 60 days from when it goes under contract. So even if my first day with a license, I get a property under contract, I may not actually get paid, get that commission check for 60 days. That's normal, okay? We don't get paid as often. We just get paid better. That's one of the things we say about real estate, okay? So, Jake, what I would say is you need to probably make some short-term sacrifices, and what you used to spend your free time on, you'll need to be spending it on your real estate business. Because if your ultimate intent is to be a full-time, fully functional, rocket and rolling real estate agent, then you need to be preparing for that. And it shouldn't be like maybe one day. It should be like within the year. I mean, you've already taken the initiative to sign up for real estate school. You're already studying hard. You obviously want this. So be honest with yourself and say, whatever I'm doing now, my job now, I don't like it, right? This is not what I want to do. So have a plan. Write it down. Say, in 1 year, I'm quitting, and I'm going to be full-time in real estate. And so that means for the next year, you may need to make sacrifices. For instance, think of the night student and use that philosophy. I'm just making this up. Let's say you work 8 to 5. When you get off of work, go home, spend time with your family, have dinner, walk the dogs, play with your kids, whatever it is that you do after work. But then you need a block of time, 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock or something like that, where you're working on your real estate business. And you need to be diligent. And there's going to be sacrifices. You need to understand that you may not have as much free time. Saturday and Sunday are not, woohoo, weekend off. Saturday and Sunday are, I'm working on my real estate business. And if you have the discipline and you have the desire to stick it out and do that, it won't be long before you're not going to need that full-time job, because you're going to have more than enough income and stuff to keep you busy in the real estate business. You're not going to be wondering, well, when am I ever going to be able to quit? You're going to be wondering, why didn't I quit sooner? So my best advice is make sure to understand that sometimes there's short-term sacrifices, and keep your ultimate goal and what you're trying to do. Keep your eye on your goals. So one of the best exercises, if you've never done this before, is to write your goals down. Take out a piece of paper and write it down. Say, I want to make X in real estate by this date. Make it attainable and specific. Put yourself on a timeline. Then look at that every day, right? So if I'm going to write here, I'm going to sell 100 grand by December 31st, and I'm just using this as an example, I would write this down. I would put this on my wall. I would put this everywhere. I would look at it every day, and this would drive me to remind me that this is my goal, right? So short-term sacrifice, I don't need to watch, maybe that one basketball game or football game that my favorite team isn't even playing, right? Or I don't need to sit there and binge on Netflix for 6 straight hours. This is what I want. And so my advice to you is to block it out, to remember what's important. What are you trying to accomplish, and schedule it out. You'll be amazed you'll get there. Most people that don't succeed in everything, not just real estate, is they don't have goals, they don't have a plan, and they don't have the discipline to stick to them. So Jake, I really hope that answered your question. Let me know if that was a good response, if you liked what I told you. Because that is great advice, and I want to see you succeed, because most people, you got one foot still in your old job, and now you get your new foot in your real estate job. And so really what it comes down to is, what do you want and how are you going to get there? So Jake, great question. Thank you so much for sending that in. Really glad to see you watching the show. Thank you very much. All right, Crystal, hit me up on Twitter. Thank you. I love that. It's awesome. Okay, so a couple of other things that have come in before the show, just to kind of bring things together here, to remind you of a few things. One question that's come up a few times over the last few days that I just thought I would just toss in there, even though nobody specifically has asked me about it. And it's the concept of GRM, or gross rent multiplier. So I'm going to go back to screen share real quick, and I'm going to give you kind of a bonus tip. In other words, in addition to asking and answering your questions, I'm going to teach you a concept to make sure you know it, because it's something that's likely to come up on the test, and it's something that a lot of students struggle with. And I want to make sure you get it. So we're going to talk about gross rent multiplier. So give me a second while I figure out this screen share business. Make sure everybody can see it. All right, there we go. Gross rent multiplier. So I've had a few emails and a few questions on our message board about GRM. So I just want to show you the slide to remind you the simplicity of what GRM is really all about. You see, GRM is a simplified, kind of straightforward version of the income approach to appraisal, where usually if you're going to analyze a residential income producing property that's, let's say, 1 to 4 units, rather than as a real estate agent, I may not have the skills to perform an income approach, and I shouldn't because I'm not an appraiser. But also, if I want to be able to take a bunch of income properties and quickly compare them, bring them down to one number. Like if I'm comparing residential properties on the marketplace, what would we like to compare using residential living area square footage, right? How do I compare 5 houses in the same neighborhood? Price per square foot. Well, how am I going to compare a bunch of income properties to each other? One way is the gross rent multiplier. So the GRM, really simple, okay? Here's the formula. So first of all, one of the things you need to do on the test, and this is in your online course, this is in your real estate book with Donaldson, anywhere that you're referencing this exact formula is going to be there. So it's the sales price of the comp divided by that comp's gross monthly rent. So in other words, the GRM, what we're doing is we're taking what the property sold for divided by how much rent it takes in per month. And that gives us what's called the GRM, which is a number of comparison. So in this example, the sales price was $150,000. Its monthly rent is $1,250. If I divide $150,000 by $1,250, your GRM is 120. If you've got your calculator or your cell phone or you're on your computer, go ahead and compute that so you can see how simple GRM is as a general concept. 150,000 divided by 1250, you get 120. So what GRM is used for instance, if I wanted to kind of compare a neighborhood and see what type of investments and what type of returns people are getting, I could take 3 or 4 properties. So one sold for X, another sold for Y, and break them all down to something I can compare, which is a GRM. And so the great way to understand this is if I want to use this to compare to the property that my client might be interested in buying, or that I might be interested in buying, I can use some simple numbers to see if it's a reasonable comparison. Let me show you how this can work. For instance, let's just double the sales price. So instead of it selling for 150, let's say it's sold for 300,000. The monthly rent is still 1250. What happens to the GRM? Go ahead and punch that in. 300,000 divided by 1250. Your GRM doubles to 240. And so what that shows you is that it's going to cost me twice as much for the same monthly return. So my GRM would go up to 240, which is not near as good. So it's just a simplified way. You're not putting in expenses and no other detailed analysis, but it's a simplified way to be able to compare income properties to see. So for instance, if all of the properties in this market area were around 120 GRM, and then somebody's asking price on their property would end up with a GRM relative to what rents are in the area of, 200, 300. So that higher GRM is bad. Well, then what that tells me is they're asking way too much money. So I either need to get this property for less or just move on. So all the gross rent multiplier is a simplified way to take multiple income properties in a market area and compare them to one another. So when you're on the license exam, if you're asked about GRM, I'm going to tell you how simple it is. They're usually going to give you the numbers and just make sure you know what to do with them. So you just need to know, okay, gross rent multiplier, sales price divided by gross monthly rent. So how much does it sell for? How much does it bring in a month? It gives me a simple number that I can use for comparison. So I just wanted to point out gross rent multiplier. And if this helps you, please let me know, because I've gotten a lot of questions and a lot of people emailing or on the course message board about GRM. And really, it's a very straightforward concept. And don't let the fact that you got to actually bust out the calculator and do a little math cause you trouble, because it's a very straightforward formula. Take the sales price and divide it by the monthly rent. And so GRM is a great way to compare a bunch of properties, because if one's got a GRM of 120, another one of 130, 119, 122, and then you got this one over here that's at 240. Well, then what that tells me is, okay, all of these are in range in the neighborhood. That's the return we should expect. This guy either got a terrible deal, is not taking in enough rent, or is asking way too much for his property because I'm not going to get the reasonable return. You see? So it's a great simplified way to be able to compare income properties, usually small residential, 1 to 4 units, from one to the other. And it's a great way for us as real estate agents, if we are investing or working with investors, to just take hard, simple, gross, raw numbers and kind of compare properties from one to the other. So that's the gross rent multiplier. Hopefully that helped you guys. If it helped you, please let me know, because I want to make sure that you're getting what you need out of this course and out of this seminar. Because look, office hours is all about you. This is not about me. I've looked at this stuff for years, and my goal is to take what I have up here that I've learned from our books and get it into your mind so that you can pass your license exam, because that's what really matters here. And that's what's really important. Okay. So a couple of other things here. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for sending me your questions. Hopefully you're getting out of this what it is that you want, because I know with all of our campuses and all of our instructors and all of our online students, I want you guys to understand that we are here to help you, and that here in the evening, what I want more than anything is to be able to provide value to you, put a face to who's behind the online program, and let you know that you have a friend here and that we're here to help you, and we're sincerely interested in your success. Okay? So I hope you got a lot out of the answers to those questions. You asked some really good ones, and I'm glad that you did. And so for those of you that may be preparing for the license exam, maybe aren't students of our school, somebody that maybe is trying to choose a real estate school, hopefully if you're getting value out of this program, please consider our school and please consider what we have to offer, because we are here and sincerely interested in you passing the exam. That's all that really matters to me. But in addition, I want you guys to understand that Donaldson is a full service real estate school. So we can take you from I'm interested in getting into real estate that don't know what to do, to walking you through and getting you into the real estate schooling process, training you up and getting you through the real estate exam. And then we have training and education, expert level programs after you get out of school to give you the practical skills, teach you the sales business, and give you a business plan and actionable steps so that you can succeed in the business. We are truly a full service institute, and we're proud of that because, look, we have our passion behind what we do. I love the business of real estate. I love training others in how to make it in the business of real estate. This is what I enjoy doing. So hopefully it comes across to you. And if you're looking for a place to call home for your real estate education, I just hope that you consider us if you haven't already. For those of you that may not know, please, if you want to keep in touch and you want to follow along with what we're doing, there's a couple of great ways you can do that. Number one, make sure to become a fan of ours on Facebook if you aren't already. It's facebook.com/Donaldson Education. So facebook.com/Donaldson Education. Become a part of our Facebook community. A lot of information goes out there, free information, helpful stuff. We are social just like you, and we want to give you a great place as a source for your information before school, during school, and after school. In addition to that, if you want a wealth of resources that can assist you both before, during, and after school, check out our website at donaldsoneducation.com. And of course, I would love to keep in touch with you because I'm very social. So you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Talks Daily. You can find me on Instagram at Chris Talks Daily. And you can also find me on Snapchat, if you like Snapchat, at Chris Talks. So that's going to conclude this episode of Office Hours. We got all of our questions in. I wanted to make sure that I showed you the types of questions. Remember that there's different types of questions. Watch this again and again to see the example of how one concept can be offered many different ways, can be asked many different ways. And here's to you passing the exam the first time. I will see you in the field.